Hi everyone, my name is Kaj-Anne Pepper, also known as Miss Pepper Pepper, also known as Pepper, and I am a dancer, a performance maker, a drag thing, and sometimes I make visual art. I want to thank Betsy and Pam for letting me hang out and do this project. It's been really exciting for me to get to hang out and pretend I'm in a residency, like I'm at night at the museum, like that movie. Ooh, some competition. All right, it's more of a nightclub than I thought. But I thought it was kind of like Night at the Movies. What's that, Night at the Museum, what is it? Is that the movie? Is that a thing? I've never watched it, but during the day and with me. And so I want to thank them a lot for inviting me to do this because I think it's kind of exciting thing. And then I want to thank Daniel Peabody and the Contemporary Art Council for kind of opening my eyes to the museum more. That was nice. Changing my attitude about places is good. How it's gonna go today is I'm gonna do this and talk to you. I'm gonna introduce myself with a little bit more depth. I'm gonna give a brief talk about what this process was like for me to come here as me. I'm gonna talk about a couple different pieces that I liked, and then I'm gonna settle on one specific piece that I really liked, and then have a couple surprises as well. Can everyone hear me okay? Except for the competition. So I'm dancing as you see, and no, we're gonna start back with my, wow. I'm just gonna accept it, but if you wanna say something you can, but yeah, I know. They're like, oh. They're getting like, they're really feeling the fantasy. They took their residency really seriously, everyone. They were like, got my golden ticket. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna give you, if you just pass it that way, and if you guys just pass this way. So my name is Kaj-Anne Pepper, also known as Miss Pepper Pepper. I moved here in 2005, and I joined the drag, punk, gender terrorist, trash drag group Sissy Boy when I was young. And I was the youngest and prettiest and most talented member of the group. And that was 11 years ago. And that's where I started really solidifying my identity as an entertainer and a drag gender blending monster thing. And that we did a lot of different things, and we did a lot of shock. We played with a lot of costume, we played with a lot of makeup, and we also just didn't care what anyone thought. So that's kind of part of my lineage, is I started in the gutter, looking up at the stars, going for mid-level fruit. Mid-level. Like a peach, but not the cherry at the top. My attitude has thus changed. Then in the times from 2007 to 2012, I started dancing with Lynda Austin and Tani Holt and Mizu Desierto Butoh Theater, studying contemporary, modern, and Butoh. And that was really great. I did a lot of dancing, and I'm kind of wearing my dancer costume today. A unitard, a little jumper thing. That's like the universal symbol for I'm comfortable with my body to dance anywhere. Yes. And then, roughly about 3, 4, 5 years ago, somewhere in there, I really decided to focus my consciousness more into, in addition to the dance work I do and the performance work I make, which is made for theaters, I also started really becoming more of a known drag queen in town. And that is more of an entertainer path, more of like nightclubs, and I'm going to give you something, and camera, and a lot of that has its own tradition, which I could talk about forever and ever. But what matters about that is because of where I came from with Sissy Boy and how I came through dance, my focus about it is very performative and steeped in feminism and a consciousness around the body and how bodies take up space and how gender can be used to represent different parts of our own expression or identity. At this point, I'm basically the least famous internationally touring drag queen in America. And if you guys at any point want to take a photo of me and send it on your Twitter, add me on your Instagram, be my Facebook friend, join my mailing list, we'll talk about it at the cafe after. I'll be less famous, which means more famous. So, thank you. That is, the hashtag is the Pepper, or at the Pepper, but I'll give you my card after. As you can tell, I'm a little tacky and cheesy and giving it a little, that's all a performance. Performers are liars, this is what we do. And I'm gonna tell you the truth about that right now. If you want to know more about my work, I'm doing a big show for Pica at the TBA Festival next month called Critical Mascara. It's a big epic drag competition of which I'm producing. Please come. And then I'm also working on a show, Diva. What was that? It's September 12th for the TBA Festival, opening night, Saturday night party. There'll be more information after. And then also, I'm doing a longer-term dance piece at Disjecta in the spring, which is called Diva Practice. And so, talking about that, so that's kind of my history about performance. Now, I didn't grow up on the wrong side of the tracks. I kind of grew up on the tracks themselves. So my academic language may not be specific, but I think we're all going to be just fine. So, thinking about that, I also want to take note that a lot of my focus around coming here, part of my process of being here in this work was walking into the, I call it a residency, walking into the museum, I kind of started acting as if it were just a big stage or a big theater or a big place for me to be in, for my body to walk through and to attend and absorb information. And I came here multiple times with multiple people. I came alone, I came with others, and I just really walked around and practiced some of the mindfulness, meditation, body-based dance stuff I do. Some of these security guards know me and they give me the look because I'm the guy that's like dancing here when I'm like, yeah. Okay, no one is looking? All right, awesome. Because I really want to relate to things gesturally. I want to relate to things almost like anthropomorphically, but in relation to, it's all about in relation to being with, not necessarily saying, well, this piece is really steeped in the history of feminism because, and I can really say some pieces really are steeped in the history of feminism here. Oh yeah, come on through. You're part of the show right now. Thanks. Thanks. Oh, this is great. No, it's okay. Example A of what I might do. Hi. So, I did follow some people. I totally follow people. I ask people questions, I follow them around. I don't necessarily, I like to improv. That's like the biggest thing I'm gonna do. And I'm not just making this up, I did make a note, but I'm not really gonna read any of it. But I'm gonna read it now. So, blah-de-blah. Okay, great. So something that I really appreciated in when I did go to art school was someone wrote, they said to me, painting is creating the illusion of depth with light, and makeup is bending light over a surface. And so all the pieces I really think about are in relationship to my history of feminism and politics and gender, or how they're going to move through the space. And the piece I chose to really talk about, Lynda Benglis Omega upstairs, I think is all of those wrapped in one. But I'm going to mention a couple of my favorites so that next time you come to the museum, you might want to check it out as well. Yeah, Philip Guston's Untitled, which is right next to the Basquiat Valentine. It is a supercharged spot in the museum for me. They're up on the third floor? Third floor, thank you. I think that their placement and proximity to each other creates a really intense tension about the relationship of racism, white supremacy, and the feeling of strength and togetherness. The Guston is, it's also about costume, which is one of my main themes, dancer costume. But he's wearing the costume of white power, which is the Klan robes, and it's terrifying and it's violent. And it has a weird Mickey Mouse finger that's pointing, and it's pointing towards the Basquiat, I think. Anyway, it's also pointing to a red stain in the painting itself. And when I almost picked that piece to talk about, but I know someone else did, so I said I'd mention it because it was really impactful to me. I like to think of that costume as the costume of white privilege and white power that is really isolating, because that painting is a very isolated figure to me. Whereas the Basquiat on the other side has a nice hue to it. There's two figures wrapped together. It too has cartoon-like drawings, and the symbolism of line is involved there. But they're together. There's a togetherness involved that is sweet. And all the red that is involved in Valentine is, to me, more of affection and adornment and life. And so that those pieces together really charged out to me, and I would invite you to look at it again. Another piece. Oh, and also, I think it's important to say that I think the Valentine is the antithesis to Guston's, the violence in Guston's piece, because they're together, and he's the figure in that piece is alone. Another piece on the second floor mezzanine outside of the photography gallery is my absolute favorite piece in the museum. It's called Boar, or what I affectionately call Silver Pig. And Silver Pig is super lovely. And I'm gonna let you pass this around. Oh, I'm sorry. And I like to take selfies with it when I come to the museum. I think it's important because it's very defiant and it's resigned, and it's ironic, but in that it's made of silver, not iron kind of way. And it's kind of like tilted up, and it knows it's on a bed of grass. It knows it's there for consumption. It knows it's dead. It knows it's going to be eaten at any point. But I just imagine taking that security glass off and going to give a little hug and cuddle. But then, of course, it's razor sharp and made of silver and rip me to shreds. So that's why it's funny. I also like to think that if I tried to do that, it would reanimate itself, like kick me in the face and then hop down to the Ai Weiwei exhibit and hide out, and then like get packed up and then go on tour around the world, you know, like a famous artist. And I totally got to put my fingers in my nose. Another little frozen gesture. But I want to get dipped in silver and tour the world too, so there you have it. And then also, granted, I'm not an art scholar. I barely went to school. But I did notice a couple things on my tours. Paintings about women's bodies and about women there's a lot of men who painted women in our history, especially in the classical area, which I hung out in. I like the contemporary wing more. But in the classical area, there's just like the pieces, the Madonna with Child with Donors, St. Margaret holding the cross, the meeting of Dido and Aeneas, the Volumnia before Coriolanus, I can't even say it correctly, the bathroom of Venus, but in French. Affectation by George Morland, and Girl with Cigarette by Moses Sawyer. Those are all paintings of women by men, and I like to think of those pieces as our actual, you know, because they're done before Tumblr, and done before Facebook, and done before picture sharing, and done before the photocopper. Like, there are the ancestors of our modern advertising experience, and those paintings, along with the other paintings of the time, but the paintings of the women are, I think, the original advertising, which is teaching us what a woman should look like, or what gender is, or what the costume of femininity is. And in my practice as a gender performer, I like to think of gender as like a costume that we're laboriously holding in our psyche. And it has its uses and it has its scenario, but I'd like to live in a world where that's a little bit more malleable. And I also have to acknowledge that being treated as born male and walking through the world being seen as male gives me a privilege that I can take my drag off a lot of times, and people I'm not gonna pass as a woman or resemble a woman once I take the makeup off or the hair down or whatever accoutrement I put on. I can take that costume off, but most women don't get to do that. And I think that's a tension in my art form and a product of the teaching of what feminine is. From paintings like these. But then there's pieces by women in here, and a couple of the ones I loved are the Sue Williams Testicular Flange in Green. I stop by it every time and just get really excited. The Portrait of My Teacher About a Woman by Florine, I can't say it, I'm so, Stettheier? I try my best, which is actually a portrait of a woman by a woman. And Spaced Out Orbit by Helen Frankenthaler, it's right up in that gallery. It's, I almost picked that one for me to talk, but I didn't. And then before we move up, I have to say also the piece that deserves great mention is the Motor Oil Buffalo Dress in the Grand Ronde Native American Gallery. By Wendy Redstar, who is an amazing contemporary artist, someone who I admire. Her buffalo motor oil dress is fashionable, it is highly crafted, it is beautiful, it is a costume, it is about gender and the relationship of the performance of that costume, which is like the performance of gender for me, but then also in that piece, it's talking about a political situation around the oil being extracted from tribal lands, the continued colonization of a culture and of resources that are surrounded of a culture. And it's that kind of level of thought and understanding that a piece comes from that I would aspire to when I make my own costumes or when I make my own performances. Whether or not I get there is, who knows, you know. I'm a little bit more ephemeral in my drag, and I just love that piece. And it's huge. You'll walk into the gallery and you'll see it, and you'll be like, oh, well, look at that. I imagine it being, if it were to be worn today in a ceremony or a ritual or a performance, that it would be used to talk not just about the mythological or ancestral history of a people, but also of the current situation and crisis that we're facing with climate change and fracking and environmental collapse and all those intense things that we use art to escape from and get deep into. That's that. I'm going to pass out some things, one of which is of Lynda Benglis naked holding a phallus object. So if you're going to avoid that, you can. I'm just looking out. I don't really care, but it's up to you. What about the children? They let the pornography into the museum. Speaking of,
this is the second talk about this piece.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh, I didn't even know that. You didn't tell me there was a second one. No repeatsies.
Yes, there was. Well, we
All right.
saw the pin up then too.
We're going to send the porn this way. And it's going to go back down, so you won't miss out.
So what's the source of that?
I'll get there, babe.
That's one of the most
Promise.
That's one of those famous images
It's
from the 70s.
iconic.
I know. But I'm going to take control of the floor again. The thing in showbiz, everyone wants to be part of the show, and I have makeup. So if you want a makeover later, it costs $55. And I'll happy to make you look like a clown. Lynda's pretty badass, and you might remember her from her 1974 Art Forum publication, where she is greased up with a double-headed dildo in her hand, sunglasses, being pretty amazing, which caused quite a stir in 1974, and I would also think it would cause quite a stir now. People flipped out, feminists rejoiced, and a generation got a taste of feminine irony and power. And in fact, in my research at the lovely library we have here, Arlene Raven and Ruth Iskin of the Center for Feminist Art and Historical Studies in Los Angeles wrote a great letter, which I'm going to briefly paraphrase here, saying Benglis's straightforward self-mockery does not dehumanize others in order to make its point, like Tom Westerman's great American nudes who represent ample tits and ass, but lack eyes, vision, and thus consciousness. That's a little shade being thrown right there. For those of you who aren't down with the drag queen lingo, shade means being like, She uses vulgarity and its attached meaning of commonness, which provides accessibility to a wide public. In that sense, Benglis' photo was vulgar, but elitist it was not. This aggressively sexual image of a woman artist sporting a large penis is markedly different from the stereotypical passive sex object female, and as such, needless to say, causes a shock which Benglis uses in her work. And you can see that that excites me because I have a history of doing shocking things in drag. And I can already tell that Lynda and I both celebrate feminine power through shock and sexualized imagery. The difference being, and pardon me for being too vulgar or common here, is while she holds her cock out, I tuck mine back when I'm a lady. Lynda is quoted as saying her art has to do with her being a person who happens to be a woman, and I think being aware of that, she's stating that she's aware of the performativity and malleability of that gender. She's a person first, in a body. She does not deny or refuse her identity as a woman, but her art is about that. Lynda's vulgar centerfold is super queer to me. It's cross-dressing without much dress. She took a risk and grabbed the symbol of male power, the phallus, put it between her thighs, and contextualized herself in art form. Solicitation, prostitution, and fine arts were all questioned here, and she makes a big leap between the common to elite. Not everyone takes the fame elevator to the top like Duchamp, or drag queens on reality TV. Just ask RuPaul. What's queer here for me is her ability to mock male power while fully embodying her female power simultaneously. She's nude, exposed, and naked, but she takes up most of the space. Her body is desirable and robust. Her attitude is fierce. Yet her gaze is also hidden behind sunglasses. She places a phallus where she chooses with control, not out of need, but out of decision. Her pleasure here is the realized vision of the pose, not just the pornographic performance of the image of the sex or the bad lighting. My history of performing vulgarity in vaudeville is great. You can look it up on YouTube. Yeah, you can look it up on YouTube. I'll leave it at that. So during my research here, you got to taste kind of what I do. I like to go and do weird things in public spaces and make people, I follow people around, I ask them questions. But Betsy let me into the Crumpacker library alone for a while, and that was really exciting. And I got to go through Lynda's file and look some stuff up, and I did a couple things. And I found the curator's report, which I'm going to read so you can get an idea of why they brought it. The sparkle knot. And I'm going to do it in more of a performative way. And so, Betsy, don't get mad at me if I sound snide, but it's just the way I think you would sell it at an auction. A sparkle knot. This wall-bound sculpture is formed from an elongated tube of cotton bunting over screening, which was twisted and looped into a knot. This fabric tube, approximately 2 to 3 inches in diameter, was soaked in plaster and holds its form. In areas, the weave shows through. In others, paint and plaster cover the fabric's texture. The surface, primarily the face, is polychromed with paint and glitter. Bright colors dominate: magenta, yellow, purple, blue, red, hospital green, and black. The glitter is both fine and coarse. It's held in place by paint and gesso and is signed Omega, Benglis, 373 in black ink. I also found out that in 97, the Margot Levine Gallery wrote Catherine, the curator of contemporary art at the time, and she said that Omega is an outstanding example from a body of work that begun in 1972 and referred to as sparkle knots. She said these knots simultaneously reference anthropomorphic forms the painterly styles of the abstract expressionists, especially Pollock, and the glitz and tawdiness of Mardi Gras pageants and parades Benglis witnessed growing up in Louisiana. And though Benglis has never formally acknowledged the feminist undertones of her work, because how dare she be, locked into one category. I mean, she is pretty famous. It's clearly a comment on the traditional women's crafts such as fabric work and decorating, which I found funny because I have my woman craft is decorating my face. And speaking of that, I'm working on a project with this artist in Hungary where we do these kind of master studies, and I was gonna paint my face like this, but I was in the bathroom up here at the Portland Art Museum about 2 hours ago. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this, and I got halfway through and I was like, oh, this is gonna be real bad. So that made me realize that Rome wasn't built in a day, Omega wasn't built in a day, and neither was my face. So I settled with a nice little cat eye and some glitter, and I think Lynda would appreciate that. I also found out that the Sparkle Knot series was mischievously named after different letters of the Greek alphabet because she has Greek heritage and she would visit Greece on summer vacations, and this piece is called Omega. Maybe it was the last one. She also, at one point, related to the floral wreaths from May Day celebrations that she saw left withering on doors of Greek houses during her summer visits. So then to me, the wreaths were a time-based piece that were inspiring by this. So it's like a slow performance that then became a solid performance, which is also interesting to me because I'm very interested in magic, but I'm also interested in the history of witchcraft, which is related absolutely to the history of women's bodies, and women's struggles. And a May Day celebration is an old, everything comes from animism, but paganism, acknowledging the cycles of the year, would do different celebrations depending on where you were from. And the wreaths were definitely a part of that folk magic, and that folk magic being related to women's homes, and it's like a charm. What good magic are you bringing this spring? What good magic are you holding for your family? And as a witchy queen myself, I couldn't help but wonder if this Omega right here is a charm to bring fabulousness into the Pam, and maybe that's why I'm here. Also, curiously, in my studies here. I found out, because I like being a little Nancy Drew detective, is, where'd it go? It's so great. Is that this piece, why don't you pass this down, was also shown at the Jubitz Center for Contemporary Art. The other one was color. It'll come down to your way eventually. But if you'll notice that it was hung upside down. Which maybe this piece is meant to hang up this way or that way. I don't know. But I really was excited with myself that I was like, oh, upside down art. Did they get it right? And it's fine to me, but it looks completely different upside down. In fact, I've kind of done a little, look at it. And that's when the guards were like, what is this queen doing? I also found out there were 3 different Lynda Benglis pieces that were going to come here. The Suvero 96, 7 come 11 from 76 and Omega, and obviously they picked this one. So now I'm going to talk about, are we good on time?
Yeah, it's time.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah, we are fine. So now I'm going to talk a little about this piece, more about my relationship to this piece specifically. And I'm just going to read what I wrote. Of course, you're thinking that the drag queen picks the most sparkly piece in the collection. I swear it's not just that. It's also tacky, colorful, and representational, and full of surprises. It has a chaos that is sparkly, and it calls out to me. So much of the color and texture and visual information is exposed, yet the majority of the piece is hidden. We only see the surface of the face, which is something I can relate to existing on the internet and on social media, and as a cabaret performer who relates to people through character. My initial observations are thus: tacky, crafty, and it sticks out, kind of like me. It's a chaos sparkle heart knot sack. Suspended from one nail, anatomical heart-shaped tubular sculpture with drips. From top to bottom, I see insertions with frayed gesso and untreated canvas, which reminds me of Francis Bacon, who's my favorite. The first color from the top down is silver dots and red paint with glitter. Mylar and glitter is generously applied. Yellow mustard under turquoise stripe drips. Is it custard or is it powder? Is it salt? The statement or the face of the piece has complex layers and purple accents with a black mustard, turquoise, red, silver. I just keep saying colors over and over again. When you look closely, you see the mesh grid underneath, which looks closely like a copper gutter. I have been so close to this piece, I have breathed on it. I know what glitter smells like. There are twists and curves leading back into its heart, red strips, silver dots. A gesture where they rejoin the composition at the meeting point is a convection point that splatters and gutters appear. A black X marks the spot, which is right there. Lots of insertions and surfaces bound it together and hang. And I have a hanging thing in my own work. I like to do this motion a lot. And that is like connected to my heart, connected to a heart, and it just kind of hangs there. And I think that was really, when I started to really get into this piece and really like isolate different pieces, things I was feeling about it, I was really feeling a lot of suspension and movement around it, which is a lot like Butoh, which you look a little crazy doing fun things with your heart. Other things I did. If you step far away, if you come to this end, someday when you come back, you're gonna see see it from profile. The thinnest of layers is all the color, and it gets more and more dramatic when you walk by, and all of a sudden you're like, boom, there she is, and then all of a sudden you keep walking, and then it starts to change. So in that sense, I like to think that the performance of this is somewhat surprising because eventually, boom, she's just right there, and then she keeps going. That's something that I thought about as well. It's messy, it's colorful, it's contained, hence my altar. I was going to do another thing, but I'm going to let that go. To be this piece is many things. It's an anthropomorphic love charm. It's an emblem of retract and repulse. Its composition is of layered affectation, crafty statement, edge-walking between kitchen irony and genuine emotion. It is and is not a heart. It is and is not a knot. Just like in the context of her work, it's a frozen gesture. And that's, I think that's really important, to have a little moment. So next time you come and visit, dance with her and see what happens. I was gonna do a whole different thing, but we already hummed, so that's great. At this point in the talk, there's one more surprise we're gonna do, but is this the point where we ask questions about it since we're near it? Well, I was raised by communists, so I'm wondering, would we rather have a surprise now and talk about it in that cafe? Or do you want to ask questions to me now while we're in front of it? Yes, first one wins. Sorry, I'm not a communist.
Eyebrows to match it?
I did. Because I was going to do my whole face to match it, but that task was high above my pay grade.
I'd like to see that someday, though.
I actually think I have to do it now because I said I would, and I'm a lady of my word, or at least try to be.
Have you known about this artist for a long time?
I have not. No, I jumped on the Benglis train when I was asked to do this project.
How do you think its orientation changes it?
I think this absolutely gives it heart shape. And from the thing I passed out earlier, it's completely different.
Yeah.
I've never seen it alive turned upside down, and nor would they let me touch it. So I just kind of which is fun for me.
What did you call it, a love icon?
It's like a anthropomorphic love charm. Because the wreaths, the May Day wreaths, which are in a sense a folk charm, this in itself is kind of carrying that tradition, but in a museum. I love it.
Do you know if there are any other works by her in the museum?
I don't know that.
There are 2 other prints. If you go to our online collections, you'll see them. You can bring them up and search and read.
They're prints? Okay.
So spending time with this work, how did your perception of it change? Did any of your first impressions really change after spending time with it?
Absolutely.
What were some of the bigger
Well,
things?
I have this thing where things that I really, really like, I don't like at first. And so, I mean, I've been here before, and I've walked by it and I've been like, look at you. And so, by actually forcing myself to like hang out, I realized that it was just, you know, like, it was just giving me what I was. And that's why I think I liked it the most. It actually helped me kind of see more of myself, which is what I think great art does. And there's just so many little things to get lost in. And also to note, she uses a bunch of different kinds of glitter. And as a drag queen, I know glitter. So like, she's using like Mylar confetti, she's using fine ground glitter, she's using craft glitter, and I could swear there's some like cosmetic glitter in there too. So.
Why do you see it as a heart and not as intestines or anything else?
Great question. Because I'm feeling it up here, but if you're feeling it in your gut, let's get into it. I have eaten, or a brain. I've eaten a lot of paint. Part of my work, I do a solo where I drink tempera paint. I don't swallow it, but I hold it in my mouth and I spill it all over myself. You can actually see it right here. I'll show you guys that later in the cafe. That's also called X marks the spot. And so I've eaten paint, so I would think that my intestines might actually look like this.
I think when it hangs upside down, it looks particularly more like intestines.
Yeah.
I have a question for the upside down thing.
Yeah.
Do you know if it actually, because this building is this wing of the building is the Jupiter Center for Contemporary Art at the Portland Art Museum.
Oh.
So that, if it was hung that way in the Jupiter Center, it's actually been hung that way here. So I'm wondering if, I don't know if in your research you know if you saw whether or not it actually has been hung. As long as I can remember this wing being open, it has hung on this spot and been in this orientation, but I'm wondering.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. That is a photo, and the cast shadow is pointing down. So unless they're like really going into Photoshop and trying to trick Miss Pepper, I think they've definitely hired it.
What I'm wondering is if that photo was submitted by the artist from the studio.
I
And they hung
think it's probably what it
differently
is.
here. I think Bruce would probably have the answer, but he's retired.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask him at dinner.
I'll have to be like, hey, Bruce, what's the story on the Benglis, huh? Let's do one more question before the final surprise. 3, 2, 1. Oh!
You said that initially you don't like the things that you end up being drawn to the most.
Yeah.
Jeanette Winterson writes that to really have a relationship with art, you have to spend enough time with it to actually have something to say back. And a lot of times we kind of go, I like that, I don't like that. Was there a conversation that started that wasn't there at first, where you're just like,
Yeah, I think I really settled on this through a confluence of, because I talked about a bunch of different pieces. And I settled on this one because I think it gave me the most me. It gave me the most, I related most to it than the rest. I have a really deep love for glitter and splatters, but it's not just the splatters. I just think that the more I got to spend time with it, the more I got to learn about the artist and the history of the artist, which just, it keeps going. And it keeps just going. Thanks, everyone. We're gonna do one more thing, and then we can release the hounds. Actually, I can just leave this here. Thank you. In honor of the alphabet history of Omega, and I really, really like this piece. I need to actually move this over. I just wanted to make a little improvisational moment with y'all. So I'm sure we all grew up singing the alphabet song. You know, so what I'm gonna do is we're gonna sing the alphabet song, and I'm gonna dance with this piece, and we're gonna sing it 3 times as a charm and as a thing, and who knows where that may lead. So, okay, thank you. How do we sing that song? It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I got permission, it's fine. H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, W, X, Y, Yo, 2 more to go. This time, really mean it. Congratulations, everyone. You just did your opening and closing night as part of the Pepper Performance Project at the Portland Art Museum. I'm just so proud of you. Thank you for all your hard work.